Welcome to another episode of Keep It Fictional with the Port Moody Public Library. I'm Virginia, here with my one and only book nemesis. Is what we call. I think we're book nemesis.
We are book
Yeah,
nemesis.
book
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so my one and only book nemesis, Miss Corene. Yes. So I think normally, since we have so many different opinions about everything, that you can expect this episode to be, a lot of debates, shall we call them. I feel like today is a topic that, at least the base of the topic, is something that I feel like we're both very passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I feel like maybe more so than some of our other book friends, probably. Yeah, and because like we are both, I think we feel like we both read a lot of books in translation, and we are both very passionate about it. And so we thought today we would take it one step further because we've done the books in translation thing, and we do that all the time anyway. We bring them to the podcast at any episode, but we thought we'll take it one step further because today we're not just going to be celebrating the translators and their works in translation, but we're actually going to read books that are by translators who have also written their own like original work. So we already talked about it in translation. We are really creating a new work. They're not just like doing and like just do it over. It's so much more complex than that. And they are really creating a new work based on a different work that they have to like completely, like come up with their own stuff, really. But these are books that they actually wrote themselves. It's their original stories. And so we are here to celebrate those translators who have moved to add another thing to their resume, which is being authors themselves. So that is sort of the official explanation of why we have this episode, because we really, really love translation. However, the real reason we're really, really doing this is that Miss Corene, and give you a pay attention for the last, like year in episode, Miss Corene has bought a book since August. I think it came out in August, right?
Oh,
August or
yeah, yeah,
July.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so uh bought the book, have talked about it in one of our most anticipated episodes, something that, like she really, really like looking forward to read, quote unquote.
I was anticipating it. That's the
Anticipating it.
title of the episode, and I was anticipating it.
Yep, because it's coming and you got it pre-ordered. But it is now November 29th, and I feel like Corene could use some extra incentive, like such as a deadline, for example, to actually pick up this book for reasons that you will find out in a bit. And so that's really why we're having this episode. It is just for you, obviously.
Thank you so much, Virginia. I feel so special and so singled out
Yeah,
and so
you're well,
seen.
well there's only one, it's you or me here today. So only got each other to pick on. So, yeah, so but before we do that, before we review what this book that Miss Corene has read is, and what she thinks of it, I thought again, because only two of us, we're only going to talk about two books, we should bring more books and bring more kind of authors to your attention. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about maybe first kind of like the translators that we often read. And I don't know about you, Miss Corene, but like I would like to find out, like, do you have translators other than the one that you're going to talk about later? Do you have translators that you kind of see their name and you're like, they're just as important as the author? When you see their name, you're like, okay, like I'm confident that this is going to be good stuff. That like it doesn't matter whether you know the author or not, the original work. You see the translator, you will like automatically as a pre-order, is a put it on hold. Are there translators like that for you, and who they are?
Absolutely. And I think it has been really interesting following the author that I am going to talk about because he talks a lot about like the process and business of translation. And for whatever reason, I had always thought that the process was a little bit reversed. So it was the publishers choosing the book and then finding a translator for it. And then, I have learned that it's actually the translators that are picking the books often. They are championing a particular author, a particular story, a particular book, and they are bringing it to the publishers as a translator to say, I will translate this work into this language so that you can publish it. And so knowing that kind of like boggled my mind a little bit because these are in some ways tastemakers. They are the people that are choosing whatever languages they're translating from of what they think will kind of appeal or stories that they feel powerfully about. Like that there's something there that they want to share in another language. And so kind of knowing a little bit about that, there's definitely some translators that I'm 100% and I do go through and I'm thankful for places that have the translator as a subject field because then I can search by translator because I know that these are projects that they are interested in and I'm interested in what they're reading and translating. And so it really has been a process of finding some translators whose stuff that I really enjoy, that I do go through and purchase whatever they translate. Of course, we prepared lists as we do. One of them is about a book that I talked about on our cat episode that I didn't quite realize had translated quite a few books that I had actually read, and so I'm really thrilled to kind of see what they come up with next. That is Alison Watts. So Alison Watts translated What You're Looking For Is in the Library, Sweet Bean Paste, and the Iosawa Mysteries. So translating from the Japanese into English, which I love like the kind of like the different projects that they're choosing. So a little bit of a traditional mystery, a little bit of something kind of sweet, a little bit of like a nostalgic, bittersweet, intergenerational story. So I'm very interested to kind of see what they are going to do. And I'm going to pass it back over to you because otherwise it'll just be me talking ad nauseum. So we can like volley this back and forth to each other. So I absolutely know that there are translators that you are following and gently stalking on your spreadsheets. So who are they, Virginia? And why do you follow them?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of having a spreadsheet that you can just go back and you make sure that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, just like you said, I as I was going through the list, I discovered translation. Oh yeah, like I didn't realize that they have done like multiple books that I read this year. But you're absolutely right in saying I think because that's the like a revelation when I realized, you know what, translators are like avid readers and they are like just like us. They love books just like us. And they wanted to make sure that those books get, like read by more people. And so yeah, just really like kind of recognizing that. And I think the person, I've talked about this person that many times, and because they haven't written a book yet, so I can't talk about it now. But it's Megan McDowell. She's the first person that really made me realize like how important a translator is. The first book that I read was the Alejandro Zambra multiple choice book that I read for the unconventional format episode. And I didn't really know, pay a lot of attention at that point, but I'm like, well, that's a great book. And then the next book that I read was the Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enrique, which also was translated by, and that's when I noticed, I'm like, wait a second, like this is a person that has translated two of my favorite books. One made me really fall in love with Latin American literature, and the other one made me realize short story is a thing and that I actually enjoy them. So really, really influential. And then I realized, as you kind of like, oh, they are readers and they are the ones who like pick books to translate. Then I'm like, if they like these books so much that they want to translate them, whatever else they translate are probably also right up my alley. And so that's how I discover a lot of authors because of her. So Carlos Fonasca, Juan Emma, like they're all books that like, oh, because of her, that's kind of it helps. It's like kind of like you're having your own like little like reading recommendation person who is like telling you like because you can see from their patterns of like what they translate. And like you said, sometimes they have different style, but I think even if it is a different genre, like the style of writing or like just the idea, it's always like similar. So I find that like that's how I discover a lot of authors because of that. Yeah, so she's probably the most important translator for me just because she made me realize how important a translator is. So who else is on your list, Miss Corene?
All right. So next one up is Sora Kim Russell. And so yeah, a lot of these you're going to see coming, Virginia. These are not going to be surprises for you. The translation community is small, because again, not a lot of things get published from one language into translated into English. The market is so small, so you see a lot of names that you recognize, especially if you're interested in a particular area or language of literature being translated. And so, Sora Kim Russell translates from Korean into English. And she, I'd say, is one of the big translators of Hwang Suk-young, who was up for the Booker last year. I have no concept of time anymore for Mater 210, who I've talked about before, Familiar Things, The Prisoner. Sora Kim Russell is one that has kind of like really worked with this author a lot, to kind of bring them into English, to bring them to English readers. But they've also done other things like The Whole, which I think is more of a Virginia book than a Korean book, 100%. And I'll Be Right There. So, and they're continuing to do incredible things. And so I really connect with the stories that they choose to tell. I think you kind of get like a vibe. I'm sure you do, Virginia, like from each of the translator, like what, what, what are they bringing and what are they choosing and what projects really speak to them? And like Sora Kim Russell, I feel like is always like a thinker. Like it's a book that you really have to like sit with for a while. And it is immediately like sometimes the things are very shocking to start with. And then you start to kind of like peel back the layers and they're so much deeper and so much more nuanced and so much more complex than you might think. So I really appreciate the projects that they choose to translate. And I'm a huge fan of Hwang Suk-young because of Sora Kim Russell. So thank you. All right, Virginia, next.
How many are we allowed to do?
Yeah,
We
we
should
should have
like
done
limit
some
it down
math.
because like this is a
Hold
very
on.
long list. So I'm just like, how many are like three?
Let's do four. Let's do
Oh,
four, four,
okay.
four
All
each,
right.
four
So
each.
choose.
So
Okay,
curate
so
that
choose
list.
wisely. Okay. I guess the next one I'm gonna say is probably J. Rubin. J. Rubin, of course, the translator for half of Murakami's books.
Yeah.
The half that I think I like better, maybe. Sorry, Philip Gabriel, you're not listening to this podcast. It just happens to be. I just feel like because I know him a little bit more from like interviews and things like that, so I get more of a personality from him, I think. He also translated Akutagawa, which of course is my favorite, Soseki, and also like he's the editor for the Penguin book of short stories, Japanese short stories. So and so
Oh,
just from
okay.
some of the different introduction, I get more of a sense of like who he is, and I just like his stuff. He also wrote a novel himself called The Sun Gods, which I didn't read for this time, and
Ah.
also a book on Japanese language called well, originally it's called Gone Fishing or Go Fishing or something like that. But in the second edition, they changed the name to Making Sense of Japanese. And it was funny when reading his introduction to that second edition. It's like, well, the publisher thinks that like gone fishing means nothing to anybody, so we have to change it to something more like general, like making sense of Japanese. Yeah, so I
Oh.
thought that was kind of quite funny. But I think he is like just like not a lot. I think like I don't know if he still does a lot of translation. I
Mm-hmm.
know there's a different translation of the book that you read from Murakami, Hard Boiled
Mm.
Wonderland, coming out the end of the end of the year that he's retranslating, which I find it really really interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. But I feel like
Huh.
he and Murakami has. I don't know. Again, I don't know enough about Philip Gabriel, but I feel like they have a
Hmm.
relationship, and that's what I really interested sometimes to get the sense of that relationship between the author and the translator.
Yeah.
And just listening because I was listening to a Megan McDowell and a Carlos Honesca podcast together, and just the like they're not just like like an author translator, they're like friends, because they have to develop that kind of relationship to be able to really capture, and they spend the time, so much time together. And so I really like that, and I feel like Murakami and J. Rubin probably has that kind of relationship, and it shows in the translation. So anyway, so that would be,
Hmm.
I guess, my second shout out. Right, Miss Corene.
Yikes. All right. My next one, again, no surprise, is a Korean to English translator. Natch. And this is Kim Chi-young, who probably most famously did Please Look After Mom, but has also done some real like kickers of books, including Whale, which we have talked about on this podcast before. Um, and then some kind of like, oh, again, deeply sad but wonderful. The Hen Who Dreamed That She Could Fly. Um, I Have the Right to Destroy Myself, and kind of like, again, a little bit more like nonfiction essays, the things you can see only when you slow down. So I like how varied what she translates in. She originally trained as a lawyer and then started helping her mom with translation and kind of fell into a passion of it, which I think is so interesting. And then after graduated, end up working in a publishing company in New York. And again, like such a gamut of books. And so interestingly written. Like none of these are in many ways very straightforward books. I think that she takes on really challenging things. Please Look After Mom. It's been a while since I read it, but I'm still shocked it's written in the second person. So you do this, you do that. And as a reader, it's really bracing to read that because we are so unused to doing that. But I think that she does a really good job because the whole point of that book is to be unsettled. And I think that she really captured that really well in the English language. And of course, Whale, whale. I crack myself up. Is also a very challenging book in different ways. And then the things you can see only when you slow down is written by a Buddhist monk, and it's kind of like life advice for dealing with like different when things don't go your way, as they often do. And so I really enjoy what projects she chooses and what voices she's working on. And it's one of those translators that I'm never quite sure what's going to come next at all. All right, back to you, Virginia.
This is hard. It's too many. I think I'm gonna base it on like this year's reading. And I think this is another one that another translator I've talked about before because he has introduced me to three, four new, completely new authors. And that's Kit Schruter. I talk about he's the one who translated the Thinking About Gladys Machine that I talked about in Most Anticipated Edible Show. And then his name was Steph. I don't remember what episode that was, but it's another like an old author. So like there's a few different authors, and through him again, I'm like reading this other one and I can't remember what the author is. See, I only know the translator's name. Like that's how important it is. But it's a Montreal author. So like he's like really finding like many different kinds of different authors and in different and because these people are amazing. They don't just use one language. Like they know multiple languages. So it was like there was French, there was like, other. So I'm like, wow, like, quite amazing. And so like I'm finding so many different authors through these translators. So I think he was sort of the one that probably introduced me more to new authors this year specifically. And of course, he also again, and I only thought a bit now that he also wrote his own book, right? Like, and I completely forgot that. I know I could have just like just reread that or whatever. But anyway, so he wrote his book called Cartoons, and also published this year. So again, could have, but like I really like again, it's just like kind of offers that I've never heard of. That's how I like, and so I really appreciate like people like that are just like giving us so many different like offers that we would not know about, and they're all like also like a lot of the work that he does is published by smaller publishers too. So again, like just like you don't hear them, so it was really nice to see the variety that he does, and I cannot wait to see what he does next. And he's the only author that I've ever seen that actually posts the author pivotal with a dog, because most of them is cats. So again, some of the and a big dog, like a big, yeah, so immediately it's just like, okay, yep. All right, last one. Oh, it's so tough.
This is really, really tough. I think I'm gonna go with like an up and coming translator. That to date only has two translations, but honestly, they came out with their first translation this year. And second one also just came out and I think is going to have a very long career because they are choosing they're choosing projects with very high appeal that I really enjoyed. So this is going to be, and I really should have looked up whether it's Shauna or Shanna Tan, who translated Welcome to the Hyunamdong Bookstore and Marigold Mind Laundry that I think Liz talked about
Briefly on the
briefly.
200. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
The 200 words summary. That's the one. I think she talks about that. Yeah.
Yes. And so she is a brand new translator. She has just kind of started off. She is I love it. New people getting into the field, new people like really promoting their stories and having like a lot of success with it. And so they're a person that doesn't have a huge back catalog to kind of go through, but I'm eagerly anticipating what they're going to translate next. All right, Virginia, whittle down your list.
No. Okay. No fair. I'm gonna pick probably there's so many like translators that work with Japanese literature, so many. Mm, um, I'm gonna go with Hayden Trial, I guess I would go with him, an Australian Japanese English translator. Um, and it's because the last few books that I read were many of them actually again discover that was translated by him. Goodnight Tokyo by Tohiro Yoshida. Excellent, excellent book. And then The Forest Brims Over, which I read last year, also translated by him. And also he also translated Maki Kashimada's book, which include Love at 6,000 Degrees and also Touring the Land of the Dead. And both of them were like books that I really, really enjoyed. And so yeah, I don't know a lot about him, I have to say. Because this was just like one of the ones out of like the 10 that I had that does kind of Japanese literature. But because it was the more recent books that I read, so I guess I will go with him. With
This was
apologies
so hard. I
to all
know.
the other ones that I want to talk about. Maybe at the end we will see.
Sneak him in.
Because
I have
yeah.
so much regret. I'm like,
Or
oh,
like
but
we
what
do
about
the like you know how like the rapid like the really quick like credits at the end of the video and we'll just like list out all the names there. How about that? Anyway. We'll be here forever. It'll be like the longest
Mhm.
episode. And then like Emma and Sadie will be like, why is it like 5 hours long if it's just the two of you?
But the subject matter.
Yeah.
That's because we're avoiding talking about, well, I'm avoiding talking about the book. Um,
Which I'm gonna make you do right now. Thank you for the segue, Miss Corene. So again, like I said, the reason why we're doing this episode, we're doing it for you, Miss Corene. So please review the book that you read for today and tell us about it. We can wait.
yeah.
Where's the pin? There you go.
There you go. Here
All
I am.
yours.
Okay, so I remember when we were recording the most anticipated episode, and I chose this book because again, I was anticipating it. Anticipation doesn't denote a particular emotion. I guess the opposite would be dread. No, okay, usually anticipation is a positive thing. And and I think I was very honest in that I said, I'm absolutely going to buy this book. I have pre-ordered this book. I'm going to physical copy. I'm going to get it on release day. I'm excited to have it in my hands. I don't want to read it. I don't. At that point, there was kind of like the publisher's blurb of what this book is about. And I was like, oh no. I am a mood reader, and so I will read pretty much anything. But I have some very definite, strong, visceral dislikes. All of which are included in this book. Every single one. There was a point at reading because, of course, I waited until the last possible second to read this book. I actually fell asleep on the couch, which was great because I was like, oh, hey, if you fall asleep and can't read this book, then maybe you can fake it. I woke up at like 11 o'clock and I was like, okay, you have to do this. At some point, I went up to my room and I was reading this book and I came across one particular sentence in the book and let out such a visceral, pained noise deep from my gullet of just like yeah. And like sometimes when I'm reading a book, I'm like, okay, this is going to be very easy to describe. I can talk about what this is in the podcast. I can easily summarize what's going on. I was halfway through this when I was like, oh, Corene, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble, Corene. And again, this is not a reflection of the book itself. This is a me problem. Um, because again, it includes every aspect of every single thing that not only do I not care about, but I deeply hate. So, what I do not hate, what I do love is Anton Her. I think Anton Her is a great translator. I think he's very funny. I think he's passionate, political, wonderful. He has translated some amazing, amazing books, including like in this year, he just came out with a swack of them. I was just on Instagram watching his Anton Her's gift giving guide of all of the books that he has translated that have come out this year, including Bora Chung's Your Utopia, I Want to Die, but I Still Want to Eat Tteokbokki, Magical Girl Retires, Blood of Old Kings, Grocery List, again by Bora Chung, I Decided to Live as Me, the paperback of Counterweight. Like, man is out there working for Korean literature. He's incredible. I am always intrigued by the books that he chooses. He does have a very magical touch in that those books tend to do really well. Um, and he's like a big thinker. And I'm a very simple person. Oh, he also famously translated BTS's book. No biggie. Okay. And so this is his debut novel. It came out in August. It is something that I own, and it is Toward Eternity. Okay. The genre is literary science fiction. That's fine. According to him, it is about science and poetry and how poetry can be science and a microcosm of all the things he loves, including translating and all the things he is interested in. The book poses the question. The book poses the question. What does it mean to be human in a world where technology is quickly catching up to biology? What this means is this book is about nanites. This book is about nanites. This book is about tiny robots, and what is it to be human. There is a line, and I'm paraphrasing because I couldn't remember it. The line that really like destroyed me is like, we're in a post-apocalyptic dystopian AI fueled clone war. And I just about lost it. I was crying. It's like, please, please. And again, this is not the book's fault. The book is very good and people love it. And if I wasn't me, if I was a clone, I would love it. But every part of that sentence, post apocalyptic, all humans dead dystopia, AI fueled clone war, it's too much. It's too much for me. Okay, let's get into this. It's the near future, I guess. Probably. I don't know. There's a doctor, Dr. Malley, and she is continuing her mother's research into how to extend human life, perhaps for eternity. Joke's on her, she's dead. Her plan was nanites. The plan is nanites. So, like when someone dies or is about to die, you just kind of like have the robot bugs eat the bod. Yeah, 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 yeah. And leave the mind. And so they're very tiny. And so everything should be fine. And then you're just nanites, but you're also you. So it's fine. But, anyways, that's her plan. Her mother was maybe not as successful because she died. But Dr. Malley has actually had a little bit more success. So patient zero died, but patient one and two have survived. Patient two is a South African cellist, and one is an academic who is training AI to learn Victorian poetry, to to learn more about humanity and poetry. I Again, this is a me thing. I don't like AI. Not good news for me. The AI becomes a character in the book. Okay, patient one. Okay, anyways, we're training our AI. It's whatever. Except patient one has disappeared. He was in his lab talking to Pensit. Should have really looked that up. Anyways, the AI, he was talking to his AI. To what end? Mm. And then he suddenly disappears, leaving only his clothes behind. The police and scientists at the lab are baffled. It's troubling for Dr. Malley because she believes that patient one is experiencing regression. Okay. So he's been replaced entirely by tiny little machines. And so he should have like a perfect body, right? But he has memories, and the memories remind his body that he's sick and had bad things happen to him. So patient one was originally Young-hun, and he had a burn on his wrist when he was cooking with his husband. He should have a perfect body, but he's got the wrist. So his memories are changing the perfect body, and eventually he'll just like collapse into Lego bits, as far as I understand it. But that is not what happens. Young-hun returns, but he is not himself anymore. But what does it mean to be himself when he's never been himself, when he's actually just a robot inside of a nanite body? Anyways, Dr. Malley is writing all this down in what she probably shouldn't be committing to paper, but is. And then she gives it to Young-hoon, who essentially gives it to patient two, that cellist, who is undergoing some difficult changes. The music doesn't feel the same, and she is having lapses in memory where she's recording Mozart but not recording Mozart, but also seeing herself and then chasing herself down with a gun, but it's not herself, but it is herself. But anyways, and from there it only gets a lot weirder. The AI gets put into a body and then wants to have a child, I think. And then Clone Wars in Russia, and then ultimate destruction of humanity, and then Ark in the sky, and then Dream World or Heaven. So this book is asking, like, is Nanite you really you? What is self? Is self the body or the mind or the memories or the experience? if you're just a bunch of Lego pieces like click together, like, are you really you? Hmm. And if you give AI a body, does it have life? Hmm? Um, Cloning eventually evolves into war destruction of humankind. Are clones reciting poetry human at all? Is the last question I have for myself. Um, yes. Okay. Hmm. Mm-hmm. If you are looking for a linear story, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, things definitely happen. Things definitely happen. And like, it asks a lot of big questions. It asks a lot of big questions. Um, that I don't know that I know the answers for. Okay, what this is as he described it himself, emotionally resonant, which it is. I felt things, mostly upset with myself. But there are some like very beautiful, touching things. It really is a meditation on what does it mean to be human. And in a world with AI and probably clones at some point, clone warring themselves into the destruction of humanity. Like, what does it mean for a clone to be human? It's very sci-fi. It's very literary. As I was talking with Virginia earlier, it kind of reminds me of Counterweight, in that there is a lot of plot happening somewhere else. And you're going to get snippets of it and you're not really going to understand what's happening, but that's really not the point. The real point is kind of about what makes a human human. What is the importance of language and poetry? The parts that I really liked are when he is kind of talking a little bit about the function of poetry. There's a part where one of the characters says, "Oh, like Victorian poetry, it's so quaint and so nice." And, the narrator at the time says, absolutely not. Like their poetry was a weapon. Their poetry was a spear that they used to colonize other places, to kind of spur them into war and into action. And so, in that way, like poetry is incredibly powerful and changing as anything else, which was really wonderful. And there's like these cyclical parts of talking about like Christina Rossetti and T.S. Eliot and Emily Dickinson, and kind of how that poetry is that thread of humanity despite the death of all humans, and the clones and all that kind of stuff. Like the poetry is kind of what elevates you over just being a collection of parts. And there are scenes in this story that I am not going to forget in a long time. It's very disturbing. My favorite part is like the clones, if they see like another clone of themselves, one of them like dissolves into dust, which I just kind of like, kind of fun. So again, if you're looking for like a literary science fiction, if what I have said in the tone of voice that I have said it in, doesn't dissuade you, and you are just like, what? Post-dystopian, post-humanist world? Yes, yes. Clone Wars killing clones for AI? Yes, that is my thing. Then this is 100% the book for you. If you want like a sci-fi twinged exploration of what it means to be human, again, this is for you. It really is like one of the tenets of librarianship is like to every book a reader. And I'm just not that reader. I really, really am not. It's like the equivalent of, giving a romance reader this book. Actually, I have no analogy to give. It's just not something that is in my genre, and they are topics that make me anxious and angry and frustrated. I don't like nanites. I don't like nano. I don't like little robots. I don't like clones. I don't like meditations on technology in a post-utopian future. Like, it's not my thing. It's not my thing. And so any frustrations that I felt with the book are absolutely on me. And, sometimes it's important to realize that as a reader and, as someone who talks about books for a living, and lives in kind of like the book space, is that sometimes the book is just not for you. It doesn't mean it's a bad book. And this is, again, a book that I don't think is a bad book. It's just not for me. I am not the reader for this. I can still appreciate it as a literary work. I really enjoyed parts of it. I love Anton Her's Mine. I find it so fascinating that this is kind of what he chose as his first novel, considering some of the other things that he's translated. And I think it's such like a bold bold choice. And I can't wait to kind of see where he goes next. Am I going to pick up his next book? Absolutely. I really do hope that he continues writing. I think that his vision and writing is only going to get crisper and clearer as he goes along. And all of these ideas that he's playing with are going to kind of ferment into like a very interesting writing career. Not that I don't. Not that I hope that he's going to stop translating, but I also think he has so much to say and in such an interesting way that I can't wait to see where it goes. So I did it. I did it. I can move this from my shelves from like unread to finished at great personal expense.
Thank you, Miss Corene. It's so funny because when before you said it, I had the word like how like I have to confirm thing. Oh, what to say after your review. I have the word tone written on my notebook. I was just gonna say, like, like everything that you said after your summary of this, I don't think anybody's gonna even listen to it because it's all about your tongue. I mean, we got it all from your tongue. Yeah, but no, you're absolutely right though. There are just some books that are like, that they're good, like you can appreciate it because they're good books. You just can't appreciate it personally because it's just like there's just so many things that just like don't work. And and that's hard, right? Because I think it takes a lot to recognize that sometimes, because you kind of like feel like, oh, like this is a bad no, it's not a bad book. There's skills involved in it. It just
I just think like the equivalent is like you sitting down to read like the best romance
mm,
book
hmm
ever read.
hmm
And I think you would be able to recognize that it's well written and it's hitting all the tropes and it's got that. It's just like there is something inside of you that is so the subject is just so painful, like almost like a physical pain of like this is just coming against something that I am not hardwired to do. And I'm just struggling with it. Like I can see that it's well done and I know I really appreciate it, but yeah, it's just I can't enjoy it in the way that someone who is wired to enjoy these kind of stories can.
and that's okay because as you said, other people like, really gave great reviews for it, like so there's definitely also people loving it, and that's good because, but you did it. You did it, you read it, you supported him, you bought his book, and you will continue to do it. So what more can he ask for, right?
Maybe less tone.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's a podcast. I mean, I know we also did video, right? Like, so the tone really, really matters. Is right?
Maybe I should do it again.
No,
Too
it's
late, too late,
perfect.
too late.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah. So Virginia, like what how did you go? How did you decide?
I know, right? So when I find out about this particular episode, like, we're doing this for Korean, like a couple of translators came to mind immediately. One of them is Idra Nove, and whom really I was aware of her as an author first, actually. But I never read her. And the first book that I read was, of course, her translation of The Passion According to GH, which of course is the book that introduced me to Clarice Lispector, which I've mentioned so many times already. I'm not going to elaborate on it, but I'm forever, forever grateful for her and her wonderful translation of that book. And so I did read her debut novel, which is called Ways to Disappear, for this episode. Um, the other translator that also came to mind was Jennifer Croft, who, of course, is most well known for her work with the Polish Nobel Prize winner Olga Tokarczuk. Is that how you say her name? And her debut novel came out earlier this year, which is called The Extinction of Irene Rey. And I'm one third into that book. And interestingly, both books feature a translator and a group of translators as the protagonists. And I can see that they're both bringing sort of this profession to the forefront with their novels, which is great. And especially with Jennifer Croft's book, it really does explore sort of translation. In fact, in the beginning of the book, we only know the characters and they call each other by their language name. They don't even really talk about their names. It's like, oh, and that's kind of how they are known to each other in the world of the author, because in the beginning, they're almost like secondary in some ways, right? Because they're so devoted to this one author. And so they'll say, like, English did this, or German stays in this room. And so it's really interesting. But both books also featured the author disappearing. And so eventually, like the with the ways to disappear, the translator went to Brazil to help the family sort of look for it, and then like to find out a lot of things that they didn't know about the author. And then in Jennifer Croft's book, as the author disappeared and they are trying to kind of figure out, and you can see that the group of translators, there's like 8 of them who always come to the house of the author to do the translation there at the same time. So I guess there's no spoilers for if you have one translation come up before the other. And they were all like sort of there, and so like you can see the transformation of them because gradually they get to know each other by their actual name. And so I think it's like a whole kind of, I'm sure, a whole symbol for like sort of the idea of translation and really exploring that. So um, again, both books get great, excellent reviews, and I would recommend to anyone who kind of really love literary thriller because there's that sort of central mystery of the disappearance. Um, but I'm not going to talk about those books um, because
You
and not
cheater.
just
You
like yeah,
cheating
yeah, yeah,
cheater.
yeah, but just like I have a reason because just like you when you're describing Anton Hur's book, there are, like you said, certain things in the book that just don't work, right, for you. And so there's just these little things in Adrian Nove's book, which I did finish. There's just like just some decisions that the characters made that I just have trouble dealing with. So it really ruined the rest of my kind of like book reading. Um, and again, like I said, like same thing, like yours, it's just got like the most wonderful review, the star reviews everywhere about like both of these books. And then in the second book, at points I feel like, am I reading a teen novel? Why is there so much like, oh, like this guy came up to me, this other translator came, Swedish came up to me, just standing right behind me. I could feel his breath and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't care. So I was just having like little things that just like I was like, So anyway, and the universe also dropped another book in my lab just last week when I got my hold on a new book in the library. And it's from a translator who's now an author, again, her debut novel. And the story and style sounds a lot more like my type of book because I think the other two weren't really my type of book. So anyway, so that's the one that I'm going to talk about instead. And that is Blue Light Hours by Bruna Dantas Lobato. This is actually a translator that I haven't actually read any work by her yet, which I need to rectify immediately. She's a translator of a lot of Brazilian authors and books written in Portuguese, including the National Book Award for translator winner a couple years ago called The Word Set Behind, which the library also has. So that's the one that I'm going to be borrowing so that I can go read it. And again, like whenever we meet a translator. It's so exciting because then now I'm like, oh, there's going to be like a bunch of offers that I'm going to be discovering through her. So I'm very, very exciting, looking forward to that. But anyway, Blue Light Hours is unlike Corene's book where so much stuff is happening. This is not a so much stuff happening book. It's not a plot-driven book at all. We have an unnamed young woman who has come from Brazil to the States to go to college as an international student. And so we get to spend a semester and a summer vacation with her. And the story is about her sort of navigating this life in a new country, slowly learning the language, filling in the gaps of the knowledge that she lacks because of, she doesn't have that cultural context or the references. And the descriptions of her sort of finding her way in a new place rings so, so, so true. I think to anyone who has ever moved, immigrated somewhere, like I can totally identify and still remember a lot of the same sort of struggles, especially give just like her, if you move to the place as a teenager or young adult, you're like already desperate trying to fit in somehow, and you're trying to figure out like how do I fit in? How do I belong? And it's so much more difficult as someone who is obviously different and that you don't like, they can tell, like, people can tell right away, and you're very, very self-conscious of the fact that they can tell that you're different. And so our protagonist is definitely trying to figure that out as she moved into the dorm, trying to figure, well, how do I belong? Like, do I just go to every party like everybody does? Do I start drinking? Like, what do I do? And it's hard because like at her college, a lot of students there are very, like they come from money, they have a lot of privilege. And so, even just before the summer vacation, when they're talking about where they're going to go, and she's like, I don't have money to do anything. I can't even go back home because I don't have money for that. So like a lot of that, like she described it so, so, so well. And of course, a lot of the other microaggressions that she has to deal with, people telling you that, oh, your English is so good, or like, insisting that you're someone else because they can't tell you apart from another person. But what I really especially like the way Bruna Dantas Lobato describe all of this and handle this experience is that it's never exaggerated. She does it like her writing is very in a very in some understated way. It doesn't feel like a stereotype. She's not like really playing like, she's not just like focusing on that. It makes her portrayal of this whole experience seem so much more genuine and so much more true. So I really, really like that about her. Her friends, she made most of them also international students, remind her that, you can't just see the things that are not here. Like look for the things that we have in this country and focus on that. And so slowly, without really realizing that, she gets used to her new life. She starts to appreciate things that she gets to experience in the States. And she starts to think, maybe I can stay here. Maybe I can actually live here. And it's most telling when English words start slipping out of her mouth when she's talking to her mother. And most of your emotions for this book is going to be probably going to be invested in this mother-daughter relationship. It is absolutely wonderful to get to spend time with these two. It is so clear that they are not just mother and daughter, they are friends. And so that's the sort of the other, I guess, storyline you can call it. The daughter talked with her mom in Brazil on Skype, regularly. And we watch them spend that time together. Even with the time zone difference, they try to make a point of calling one another regularly. She would share bits of her life here in the States. She showed her mom her apartment building that looks like a milk carton. She shows her mom the first snow when it started snowing, something that her mom has never seen before. And her mother shares stories from home with her, like usually concentrating on the bad stuff. That's just kind of what she likes to do. She'll talk about like the bad things that happen in the neighborhood or some of the natural disasters. It's just the way that she kind of deals with like being there sort of on her own. They talk, they drink tea together, they lift each other up when the other is down. Of course, for the daughter, it's not easy living in a place that you don't know. And because she's the mother, she's always going to be there for you. She's always worried about you. The daughter also take cares of the mother, who has a chronic illness. And so very often if her mother doesn't pick up right away, she worries about it. Or sometimes her mother gets sad because she thinks about her own mother who has recently passed away. If there's really heavy rain, she worries that maybe the grave will get washed away. And so her daughter will say, well, let's make grandma's chicken soup together. So she'll ask her mother to watch her make soup, making sure that she adds the right ingredients and the right amounts and cook it the right way. So on this very small rectangular screen under the blue light, both from the computer screens and also from the little table lamp that she has, they watch one another and they share their stories and they started to notice those little subtle changes. Like I said, the English word that accidentally slips out that her mother doesn't understand, or the face that has an extra worry line. And as the daughter adapts to this new life, it's about balancing sort of the things that she wants, the things that she needs to do, but also balancing that with taking care of her mother or being able to still be there for her mother. And she feels bad, she feels guilty because, like at sometimes she would think, you know what, maybe I won't go back to Brazil after my studying. Maybe I will stay here. And every now and then her mother might say something that, kind of indicate that her mother kind of can see this change and she feel bad about it. And it's this like the way that they start from kind of staying in touch with each other, using this Skype, fighting off that loneliness for each of them, like being in a completely different country, to slowly kind of recognizing that, like they're both kind of growing up and both changing in a way. And it's such a beautiful mother-daughter bond that you don't see a lot in books. And I find that it was really interesting because like I said, they really feel like two friends, like two best friends that are getting like talking to each other, and nothing is dramatic, like there's no like big things that happen, but it's just all these very like subtle changes that that their lives are not the same anymore. And I really, really love that about this book, just that wonderful relationship. And again, not much happened like in the book. But there is definitely it's definitely focused on the characters, it's focused on that relationship. And her writing, like Bruna Dantas Lobato writing is very, very good. There's quite a lot of lines there that just such a wonderful way to describe like that relationship that they have, like, and I love everything, like really, really, really enjoy the writing. I think which is not a surprise, as Corene pointed out, like, these are translators. They have to write like constantly. And so they are like they got their practice. Like they are really, really, really good at that. And I really enjoy this. I think it was interesting because reading two, well, one and a half books about kind of like a more kind of a different take on it. It was kind of like it was quite refreshing to read this, for sure. Um, I think I'll leave with like one of the review that I think really captured what this book is about. And it said, for Dantas Lobato and for her narrator, there is no English text without its Portuguese counterpart, no story without an origin, no daughter without a mother, no immigrant without birthplace. But there is also no immigrant without a new home, no daughter without an identity of her own, no story without a middle and an end, and no Portuguese anymore without English layered atop it, refining it, translating, forcing a fictionalizing cycle. And this is from the Cleveland Review of Books. And I really, really like that because it's very often stories like that are often about, sort of like the missing home. But there's also like that growing, that other part of it, which is growing in a new country. And got the coming of age of the daughter and the mother recognizing that coming of age, and both of them recognizing that, like things change, but still they have this wonderful, wonderful relationship. In the end, when the mother came actually to the States to visit, because the daughter couldn't get away, there was just this like wonderful scenes of them like sharing American things, that she has never experienced before, just eating like pancakes with maple syrup and things like that. That was just so sweet and just so nice to see. And seeing her mother enjoy that experience and really like just seeing how well her daughter is doing and just really, really happy for her daughter, just like a lot of things. And I find like that just it was probably the best part of the book, like the whole idea that the way she described like sort of that new immigrant experience was already great, but like just that relationship is just so good. And I think it's something that a lot of people can kind of identify with. So a quieter book, but I think that's still very, like emotional kind of book. This is Blue Light Hours by Bruna Dantas Lobato, and I cannot wait to read some of the other books that she translated. All right. You did it, Miss Corene. You did it.
I did it and I'm stronger for it.
Yes. Yes. Stronger with nanites.
You're functionally immortal with nanites, unless you run into your doppelganger or other clones and then you
Yeah, they
disintegrate
changed it.
into
That's
dust.
pretty cool. I like it.
Honestly, it worked. Honestly, it worked. Like that part was fun. Like, can you imagine if you ran into another and you don't know which Virginia is gonna like disintegrate?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? See, you could have joined our AI episode too. That would have been also perfect for that.
Was I sick? No, I wasn't sick.
No, were
You
on vac
spared me,
you
I
were on
think.
vacation.
You spared me. Yeah, people can only talk about robots when they're not in my presence.
We have to be strategic about the types of topics that we pick. So,
Yes.
all right. Well, thank you for
Thank you.
spending this time talking about more translation. I'm sure we will do this again and frequently. Yeah, so I hope that everybody can pick up some of these and I mean, I don't know, like they're not like a ton, but like the more you look into it, like it just feels like there may be a few more probably out there that we haven't discovered yet, like translators that are also authors. So do check those out. And of course, they also, I mean, really, translation is also a new work. So, also look those up. We got lots of suggestions for you. We've given you lots of choices. So I hope that you pick some of those up from your local library. So pick up your books from the library and we will see you again next year.
It's a good book.
I'm very tempted to use that noise that you made when you read that sentence as like our teaser thing.
It's
I mean,
exactly how I
people would just
feel.
be like, "What?"
Listening to Animal Noises podcast
Yeah,
brought to you by NPR.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's that probably will be what I'm gonna do. Okay. Anyway, all right, everyone. Have fun reading, and we will see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye.